Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, ruling due in the next half hour could change the way gang and group crime is prosecuted in cases known as joint enterprise. The prosecution tool, which is used in murder cases involving groups of people, means there is no need to prove a member of the group intended to kill. To be guilty of murder, the prosecution need only show that someone foresaw that the person they were with might kill or inflict serious harm. It's controversial because many campaigners believe it too easily allows those who play a minor role to be prosecuted for murder. This morning's ruling is around a challenge brought by a man called Amin Jogi, who was convicted of murder under joint enterprise because he encouraged a friend to stab a former police officer. His legal team have asked the judges to consider whether possible foresight of harm is a high enough threshold to convict under joint enterprise. We'll hear from his mother shortly, but first our reporter Jim Reid has been looking at the complex issues around joint enterprise.
Who's got you think you're with?
What, girlish man, yeah?
Disrespecting me. I'm not even listen, yeah?
A Met Police video from a couple of years back. Who is guilty of this murder? The person with the knife, the girl egging him on, the friend who stood back and let it all happen? The answer, of course, could be all three. Joint enterprise is not a law, but a legal principle. To be guilty of murder, you don't have to be the one carrying out the act of killing. The test is whether a member of a group or gang should be able to foresee that another member might commit serious bodily harm.
The jury has found both Gary Dobson and David Norris guilty of the murder of Stephen Lawrence.
In the case of Stephen Lawrence, the police could never prove who physically stabbed the teenager. But after a long wait, his family got some justice when Gary Dobson and Stephen Norris were given life sentences, both convicted under joint enterprise. This is nothing new, of course. It was first used as a deterrent to stop people getting involved in duels 3 centuries ago. But it's something police and prosecutors have started to rely on more, especially in complex gang killings. Research out in 2014 found that over the past 8 years, at least 1,800 people were prosecuted under joint enterprise, more than 17% of all murder cases in the UK.
Last night, Victoria Station was brought to a standstill after a 15-year-old boy was stabbed.
The victim was chased into the station and stabbed when he was cornered.
12 teenagers have appeared in court in London charged with the murder of a 15-year-old boy.
Take the death of 15-year-old Sofian Bella Muadden at a station in London, the biggest ever prosecution of a gang over a murder. 8 were convicted in total, including a 16-year-old. He was carrying a weapon, but was outside the station at the time the victim was stabbed. Critics say the law is just too blunt and can lead to the wrong people being locked up for life. Its backers say it's often the only way of getting any form of justice in complex cases where gangs might be involved.
Well, as I mentioned, the judgment today centres around a challenge by Amin Jogi. Earlier, I spoke to his mother, Rachel Whitehead. She told me how she was feeling ahead of the ruling.
Nervous, anxious, excited. All rolled in one. Couldn't even sleep last night because obviously it's a very big day for us all. This ruling is going to have a massive effect on everyone if successful. If not, the fight continues.
It centres on where you draw the line in whether someone is guilty of murder when they're at the scene of a crime. Your son was at the front door of a house, his friend was inside, he stabbed a former police officer and killed him, and subsequently, of course, your son was found guilty of murder by joint enterprise.
That's correct.
What do you think about where the line should be?
I just feel that of the second party should not, if not proven that he was encouraging or didn't know what was going to go on. You can't foresee somebody else's actions, what they're capable of doing or knowing what they're going to do. In Amin's case, he was outside the property at the time. The altercation took place inside the house and the weapon was taken from inside the house too. So Amin had no idea what was going on inside that property that night because he'd gone off and then come back, told his co-accused to come on, let's go, oblivious to what was going on in the house. the person inside, the witness, said that Amin was actually egging him on, which was not proven in court because there was no word said what Amin had actually said by the witness.
This case, obviously focusing on your son, could potentially have a big impact on the law.
A very big impact, yes.
Are you very conscious of the potential impact of that?
Yes, yes.
Is that as important to you as what happens for your son?
We're all equally in this together. Whoever's fighting this dreadful law, we are all in it together. We stand side by side.
There are parents whose children have been killed and their killers have been convicted through joint enterprise in cases where a prosecution might not otherwise have been possible. So they're equally concerned about the outcome today and the potential ramifications.
Yeah.
What would you, how do you see that, you know, that other element of this?
I can understand having lost someone very close to them, and I understand how they feel with this law. But we've also lost somebody, although we get to go and see them, but we've also lost somebody to the system for life. It's fair that they do get justice for their children. Every parent would want that if they lose a loved one. Every person would want that. As far as it goes with the law, it's locking too many innocent people up. There's hundreds of people locked up under this law, which is so unfair if they had no part to play. The person who actually committed the murder should be charged with murder. It's not fair bringing other people down if they haven't done anything. For example, Amin, he was outside the property, oblivious to what was going on, but he's convicted for murder, serving a life sentence.
What do you do after today's ruling? If it goes against Amin, what happens next?
We continue to fight. We will continue to fight. It would not end here.
What are the potential options after today?
More campaigning, more research, just keep on going.
Well, that was Rachel Whitehead, whose son Amin Jogi was given a life sentence after he encouraged a friend to stab a former police officer in 2011. He's challenging the rules on joint enterprise at the Supreme Court today. We're listening to that was John Johnson, whose son was murdered in Sunderland in 2007. 3 men were convicted of stabbing him to death under joint enterprise. Thank you very much for joining us. Tell us what happened to your son, Kevin.
Good morning. Well, it was in May 2007. Kevin and his partner had been out for a drink on a Friday night. They got back home, they were in the bedroom ready to go to bed, and there was a commotion outside. Kevin looked out the window and saw the 3 boys there. They were gesturing him for to come out, shouting obscenities at him. He did go out to remonstrate with them, to tell them to shut up and move on, but a fight ensued. And he was stabbed 4 times, and the 4th time was through his heart, and that was fatal.
And his killers were convicted of joint enterprise. Tell us how important joint enterprise was to this case. Well,
it's very important because neither of them admitted to it. They all pleaded not guilty. So this law can convict them all. I know there was only one that actually stabbed Kevin, but if the evidence shows that the other 2 had a major part in it, and rightly so, they should all get lashed up at the same time.
How do you feel about the fact that the Supreme Court is looking now at the issue of joint enterprise?
Well, I'm very disappointed. To me, the joint enterprise is a good tool to have. It's been around for over 300 years and it's worked all that time. So why tinker with something that's not broke? I think really they should be looking at ways of stopping all the murders. They should be looking at solutions and deterrence rather than tinkering with the laws.
Campaigners say they are concerned that it is too blunt a tool for murder convictions, and it has led to people being convicted for murder where they weren't directly involved. How do you see it?
Well, I can only talk about our Kevin's case. And the evidence that was put in front of the judge and the jury got them 3 lads convicted. Fair enough, there was only one that stabbed our Kevin, but the other 2 played a part.
And without joint enterprise, would a conviction have been possible in this case?
I wouldn't have thought so.
Thank you very much. John Johnson, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we will be live at the court for that judgment at 10:15. We will bring it to you then.
I've been getting away with it all